Garry Ridge, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Tom, it's just an absolute pleasure to be with you.
I love it. It already came out for our listeners. The good day. Garry is from Australia. So let's start there, Garry. Maybe give us a little bit of your background before you became the CEO of WD-40. Give us a little bit of your background and how you got there.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm from Sydney, Australia, born in Sydney, grew up in middle class. My father was a fitter and turner engineer. My mum was a stay-at-home mum. I'm the youngest of four, 12 years difference between me and my next brother. Went to just a normal public school and high school. Actually left school at the age of 16 and became a management trainee with a retailing group in Australia. So did that and went to night school at the same time. And then after that, I was invited to join a wholesaling company that actually happened to sell WD-40. And from that, I met the distributor of WD-40 in Australia. And from that, I met the people in the US. So years went on. And eventually, they asked me if I'd like to join them. I opened our Australian subsidiary in 1987 with a fax machine under my bed. Because we were just starting a company, and that was a lot of fun. You know, starting something from scratch is always great. And in 1998, we opened WD-40 Company Australia, and I primarily worked in the Asia Pacific region, a lot of work in Asia. I then increased my studies in marketing and sales. And in 1994, I was having a conversation with our then CEO, and I said, hey, do you want me to do some more work? He said, would you like to move to the US? I said, to do what? He said, to help us expand globally. You happen to have a passion for what we want to do, which is to take the blue and yellow can to the world, and could use some help. And I said, well, sure. Disrupt yourself, hey? And so we packed up our toys and moved to San Diego. And 3 years later, he retired and I became CEO. And 25 years later, I'm sitting here.
Wow, that's fascinating. And you have a distinct competitive advantage. We'll get into how culture is a distinct competitive advantage, but your accent is really unfair for most of us, peon leaders who don't have that Australian accent. I've got a good friend who lives down the street, also from Sydney, also a CEO, and I always thought that was unfair of him to use that. So maybe we could jump into that, because I know you believe strongly in culture. You know, you've been named the #1 culture coach by Marshall Goldsmith. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so let's jump right into culture and talk about, this is the Culture Eats Everything podcast. Why is culture important to you?
Well, Aristotle, who was born in 384 BC, said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. So, isn't it our job as leaders to put pleasure in the job? And what does pleasure in the job mean? It means, imagine a place where you go to work every day. You make a contribution to something bigger than yourself. You learn something new. You're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy. Happy people create happy families. Happy families create happy communities. Happy communities create a happy world. And my goodness, we need a happy world. So why is culture so important? Because we as leaders in organization have an enormous opportunity to make a positive difference in the world if we create cultures where people are treated with respect and dignity, learn a lot, and every day engaged in a place where they feel safe. So, there are two things in business, Tom, that are really important: strategy and the will of the people. What do I mean by the will of the people? Well, if we look at the employee engagement numbers globally, and during the pandemic of COVID, they went down to 16%, which means 84% of people who went to work every day were disengaged or actively disengaged. Do you think they were enjoying their work? No. Do you think therefore they were doing their best work? No. Do you think they were going home happy? No. That's proven because we've now gone into what they call the Great Resignation, which I call the Great Escape, because people are escaping toxic cultures. So our job is to create that culture where people do go home happy. This is simple. It's not easy. Time is not your friend. It's very deliberate, but it's so important. So we as business have the opportunity to make a positive difference on the world. And one of the quotes that I read many years ago that really meant a lot to me was from the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama said, our purpose in life is to make people happy. If we can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. And when I looked around businesses, we were hurting a lot of people, and we're better than that. We can do better than that.
I love that. And you know, the Great Escape. I like that language. We're actually writing a book right now called the Great Resignation, with resignation crossed out, and then the word engagement. So the Great Engagement, and ultimately, it's the work of the leader to engage the people in the work, you know, to give them fulfillment, and so they can go home, as you said, and make a difference in not just their work environment, but their families and their communities. And it's in our opinion, sort of the ultimate antidote to the Great Escape, as you said, is engagement. I'm curious, what do you think about that idea?
Well, sure. You know, and here's why I call it the Great Escape, Tom, is before COVID, people went to work, and, you know, work was okay. Some people were engaged. Some people were moderately disengaged. At the end of the day, they went home and life was kind of stable and normal. So if you package that all together, things were kind of okay. Then COVID hit. And now the work situation actually deteriorated, because now they were separated from what we need, which is that physical connection, that mental, emotional connection. You know, one of the biggest needs we have as human beings is to belong, that human interaction. So that was taken away. And a lot of them were in these toxic cultures that, you know, leaders were, creating. And they went home and their life was also disrupted, because we're in this stage of total uncertainty, and something had to give. And in some cases, unfortunately, home life was the one that gave up. You know, the number of people I know that have had broken relationships during COVID, a lot more than I've known before. But then also a lot of people said, I'm going to escape this other toxic culture, which is the one that I have to go to work to every day. I want to go somewhere, to quote you, where I can be engaged, respected, you know, treasured. You know, everybody who goes to work every day is someone's precious son, daughter, husband, wife, auntie, uncle, cousin. So we need to respect that. And engagement is really important. But the key to engagement is belonging. Do I feel like I belong?
And how do you do that? You know, Garry, for all the young leaders out there, maybe this is their first CEO job, and they're looking to create that high level of engagement and belonging. What advice do you have for them?
Well, there's 4 pillars. The first one is care. So do you care for your people? And this is where your empathy eats your ego instead of your ego eating your empathy. So the number one is, do you care for your people? Do you love them enough to not only reward them and applaud them when they're doing great work, but are you brave enough to redirect them when there's times that they can be their better self? Are you committed to the fact that as a leader, you're there to help them step into the best version of their personal self? So the first one is, do you care? And a lot of people, unfortunately, their ego eats their empathy instead of their empathy eating their ego. The number 2 one.
Before you go to number 2, Garry, let's dive into that a little bit, because I think it's not a rhetorical question, because I think most leaders would say, well, yeah, of course I care, but they don't actually stop and think, are my actions aligned with that? Do I care in the way that Garry is talking about caring? So say a little bit more about how does that show up? What does that actually mean to care about your people?
Well, you know, firstly, there should be attributes in you as a person where you can ask yourself, am I being the caring leader I want to be today? And what does that mean? Do I show gratitude? Do I show empathy? Am I communicating? Do I take time to ask people, how are you? Am I rewarding them and applauding them for doing great jobs? You know, it's a shame that most people only know they're doing a good job because no one yelled at them today. So am I throwing sunshine, not a shadow? Am I dedicated to their learning? Am I being their true coach? And think about what is a true coach. A true coach never runs on the playing field, where micromanaging ego leaders want to run onto the field, pick up the ball, play the game for that person. Why? So they can go to the podium and pick up the prize. So, that's not caring for your people. So caring is not free pizzas and popcorn in the office. Caring comes from the heart. Am I truly wanting to do what I need to do to be a servant leader? And when you think about the attributes of a servant leader, they love and involve their people. They're always in servant leadership mode. They're expected to be competent. They're connected. They show emotional intelligence. They love learning. They have a heart of gold and a backbone of steel. They're champions of hope. They know micromanagement isn't scalable. They do what they say they're going to do, and they love feedback.
Love it. Love it. So go on to number 2.
Candor. No lying, no faking, no hiding. I believe most people don't lie. I believe they fake and hide. Why do they fake and hide? Because of fear. So who creates fear? That the person who creates fear is this, and I've called it the soul-sucking CEO, the soul-sucking leader who sucks out of the business because they're creating fear. And what are some of the attributes of a soul-sucking leader? They're the master of control. They're the know-it-all. They're corporate royalty. I've climbed up this corporate ladder, therefore thou shalt worship me. They think learning is for losers. Their ego does eat their empathy. It's always about me, 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 me. They have all the answers. They don't think I don't have all the answers. They love a fear-based culture. They think micromanagement is essential. They don't follow through with their commitments, and they hate feedback. So, that's what creates fear, which has people fake and hide. So care for your people, be candid, and don't live the attributes of the soul-sucking leader or the soul-sucking CEO.
All right. So we got care on board, we got candor on board, and the opposite of candor, which is that soul-sucking, fear-mongering CEO. What else? What are the other 2?
Accountability. Are we clear about what we're going to hold each other accountable for? Now, I wrote a book with Ken Blanchard, the 1-minute manager, called Helping People Win at Work. And the tie-line is, we're not here to mark your paper, we're here to help you get an A. And accountability is about helping people get A's. Most people let people down because they're not clear about what we're going to hold each other accountable for. So it's important for us to be very clear about what we're going to hold each other accountable for, and to have a clear agreement that we feel safe calling each other on our accountability.
Love it. I love it. It's one of those words that in our work we find has got a lot of baggage to it. You bring up accountability and immediately people don't think of, Disneyland and lollipops. They think probably something more in terms of, okay, someone's about to be fired, someone's about to be blamed. And so I love that idea of accountability. I think what I hear you saying is really about how do we help people get an A?
Exactly. And if you don't know what an A looks like, which is accountability, how do you get there? So accountability to us is, Tom, this is the situation. If an A walked in the door today, what would it look like? All right. Are we going to hold ourselves accountable to that A? And it's a two-way street, because as a leader, I am as much accountable for helping you get that A as you are in getting the A. This is a two-way. This is not a one-way. This is a two-way communication.
All right. What's number 4?
Responsibility. So we wrote a pledge in our company called the Maniac Pledge. And this is a pledge we take about responsibility. And let me read it to you. I am responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I am responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. And if I am doing something others should know about, I am responsible for telling them. So that's our pledge of responsibility, which takes away all of the things that I never knew I could. People hide behind the thing that they weren't told. Well, ask the question. Go for transparency. So that is our pledge of responsibility. I am responsible for.
And why Maniac?
Funny story. When we first wrote that, I had a poster hanging in my office, and it was of Greg Norman. And he used to have a symbol which was a shark on his hat, and it was the maniacal shark. And I thought, well, why not call it the Maniac Pledge?
I love it. From golf to hats to WD-40 pledge of responsibility. That's great. So pledges like that are great. They're great symbolisms, but the words on the paper aren't worth much in our opinion, because sometimes the best you can get is you'll get compliance, which is very different than commitment. And my guess is knowing the quality of the team you've built, you've created a culture of commitment, not compliance, where people just sign it because I have to. If I want to keep my job, I got to sign this Maniac Pledge. How do you do that? How do you create a true buy-in to the ideas like that?
By living our just cause. And our just cause is a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other. That's our just cause. Our why that we exist is we're in the memories business. We exist to create positive, lasting memories, solving problems in factories, homes, and workshops around the world. And we know that if we live our just cause to protect and feed each other by acting on our why, then we are going to build an enduring company that will protect our people over time. And, we've been doing employee opinion surveys, Tom, since the year 2000. Our employee engagement score is 93% globally. 98% of our people globally say they love to tell people they work at WD-40 Company. 97% of our people say they respect their coach. Now, who is their coach? Their coach is their manager, because we don't call people managers here. Everybody is a coach. Their responsibility is to coach the people they lead into their best game. 97% of our people say they are aligned with our values. And we've been tracking this, as I said, since the year 2000. And so it's not about compliance. It's about creating a place where people come to work, are treated with respect and dignity, achieve great stuff, and are rewarded and applauded and go home happy.
And so the fundamentals of that is you're living what you're preaching. You actually create a culture where people are being what you espouse to. It's not just words on a paper or words on a wall.
No. And, we, in the book that I wrote with Ken Blanchard, we talk about it was all really based on how awful employee feedback was within organizations. When Ken was my professor at the University of San Diego, he told a story about when he was teaching at one of the top universities in the US. He used to give out the final paper at the beginning of the class. And the academia and administration would say, "What the hell are you doing, Blanchard, giving out the final paper?" He said, "Not only am I going to give out the final paper, what I'm going to do is teach people the answers." So he said, life is not about some normal distribution system. It's about helping people get A's. And I thought, wow, that's exactly what we don't do in organizations. We don't help people get A's. We have these antiquated review systems where we sit down once a year and we talk about the history instead of what reviews should be, which is feed forward, not feedback. And so in our review system, it's really about us having these ongoing conversations. And half of it is about our values. So when we sit down with people, the first part of our review system is the essential functions. This is the essential functions related to your job. This is what an A looks like. I'm going to help you get there. The second part is some short-term goals. The third part is our values. And we list our values in our review system. And we ask our tribe members, because we call ourselves a tribe, not a team, to tell us how they've lived our values in the last 90 days. We only have two measurements. You either live them or you visit them, and we don't want a lot of visitors. So even though in one room in this building and in other rooms in our buildings around the world, our values are up on the wall, where they really are as embedded in that conversation that we have at least every 90 days. And I want lots of coffee stains on that piece of paper. I want lots of scribble on that piece of paper. But more importantly, I want lots of dialogue between our tribe member and the coach about how do we live these things that are the foundation of our business on an ongoing basis. And those are our values.
So your system of sort of coaching and building people up, I think what I heard is 90 days, and it's an ongoing dialogue, not a one-way feedback train of here's what you did wrong last year.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens is after we've agreed what the A is, in this review set process, it's the tribe member who tells us, where are you? Are you tracking to an A? And I've had conversations where people I've coached said, I'm tracking to a B, and I would ask them this question. So what's getting in your way? What's stopping you? What do we need? What's the stallers that are getting in your way? What kickers do we have to put in place to help you get to where you were? Because we need to get those out of your way. Now, it could be a competency issue, which we may have to bring in some help with. It could be a collaboration issue. It could be an external environmental, but let's get them out on the table and talk about them.
Yeah, it's proactively identify the barriers between us and the future that we're all committed to.
Yeah,
I love
what are
that.
the kickers and what are the killers?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so counterintuitive, I think, to the way a lot of organizations do it. One of my personal missions in life, which I'll probably never get to, is to put a death stake in the heart of every performance evaluation system that's out there, because they, as you said, they're very much rear view mirror looking, and a lot of them are kind of gotcha moments as opposed to ongoing productive conversations. If you can truly create a coaching culture, then you don't need performance reviews, because everyone knows exactly where they stand at all times. And
you have to have a clear set of values to help trigger the conversation around what you need to coach. And let me tell you share you an example on that. So our second value in the company, and our values are hierarchical. There's 6 of them. The number 1 value has more weight than the number 6 value. The number 2 value is we value positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships, whether that be with our tribe mates, our colleagues, our customers, our shareholders, and even our competitors. We want to create a positive, lasting memory. So some time ago, I was in a meeting in our office here in San Diego, and someone who I know and love was in that meeting, and they weren't creating positive, lasting memories. They were having a really bad morning. And you could feel that toxin kind of coming out. It was affecting the room. You've been in those meetings, Tom, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you do in that situation? Well, if you're a soul-sucking leader, you might stop the meeting and you reprimand that person and tell them to get their attitude in order. That's not going to do any good. But if you really want to coach that person, there's a different way to approach it. So the meeting ends, and I say to this person, Tom, let's go for a walk. So we walked outside of our building, and I start looking behind a truck and in a car and in a trash can and behind a tree. And Tom says to me, what the hell are you doing, Garry? So I'm looking for you, Tom. What do you mean? Tom, the you I know and love was not in that room today. What's on your mind? What's getting in your way? How can I help you? Which triggered a conversation based on one of our values that allowed me to hear what was getting in his way that day. And the bottom line was Tom was just having a bad day. Mm-hmm. So we kind of got all of that out of the way, and we talked about, how does he think his influence in that meeting either positively or negatively impacted the tone of the meeting. And he agreed it wasn't too good. So at the end of it, there's a learning moment. We don't make mistakes at WD-40 Company. We have learning moments. So we said, that's a learning moment. High five, hug. Tom goes back into the building and goes to a couple of the people and says, hey, sorry. They said, Tom, that wasn't you. Are you okay, mate? Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you. I just had a bad morning. What happened the next morning? I see people going to Tom saying, hey, Tom, just want to check in with you. You okay today? There's using our foundation of values as a trigger to have a coaching conversation that's not full of fear, that is beneficial to the person. It actually reinforces who we are, and we move on to the next thing.
So what do you say to those leaders out there who say that's a bunch of soft hooey, that whole empathy thing that, I couldn't agree more with you, Garry, personally, but what do you say to those folks out there who are saying, no, that's not for the business environment. We're here to get results and, we don't have time for that stuff.
There was nothing soft in that conversation. It's much easier to praise someone than to redirect someone. Secondly, if you want to talk about the bottom line, 93% employee engagement equals a market cap over a period of time that's gone from 250 million to nearly $3 billion. We've 6x'd our sales globally, expanded and grown year over year. And at the end of the day, what do? We sell oil in a can. No, we create positive, lasting memories. And it's all about a culture that's a competitive advantage because we have high will of our people, because it's a place where you go to work every day, you make a contribution to something bigger than yourself, you learn something new, you're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy and you come back tomorrow.
And the happiness, that's an interesting one, because I've always wrestled with that myself, that is it really the job of an organization to make their people happy, or should we be more focused on, and maybe it's not either or, but more focused on helping people live a fulfilling life, a life where they can come and they can contribute, because happiness is a little more subjective, a little more sort of up and down depending on the day. Just curious, what's your thoughts on happiness?
Tom, isn't happiness the outcome of a fulfilled life?
No, not always.
Okay.
Not always, but I could see that. I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if your life is not fulfilled, the chances of you being happy are pretty low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So fulfillment is important, which is self-development, learning, teaching, appreciation, belonging, all of these things that are so important to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does communicate. I think most people understand sort of the essence of happiness, and the opposite of that, which is the soul sucking, CEO in that culture. Well, what has you excited about the future, Garry? We've got a few minutes left here, and just curious, what has you excited about the future of yourself or the organization, or just maybe the world in general?
What has me excited about the future? The possibility that I'm going to wake up tomorrow has me very excited. But more importantly, we as leaders have a job to do more than ever before. And if we can do our job to build cultures that, really enhance people's lives and enrich them, we're going to make the world a better place. So, life's a gift. We have no right to send it back unwrapped. We got to get this thing unwrapped as quick as we can. And we can make a difference to do that. It's simple. It's not easy. Time is not your friend. This is not the soft stuff. Anybody can be a soul-sucking, arrogant, dominating leader. But it's really hard to be a servant leader who cares about their people and respects the fact that we're here to build an organization that has a thriving economy so people can benefit from that.
Yeah, it's a responsibility. I think it's a good way to put it, that we leaders have a responsibility to lead through these challenging times. And I agree, it doesn't need to be terribly difficult. In fact, I think many ways, a lot of the business books that are out there make this so heavy. They make the subject of leadership so confounding, lots of buzzwords. And at the end of the day, it's really just about being human and about being real, and allowing your humanness, your empathy to show, because that's what people want. They want leaders who are human just like them.
The best book you can ever read, Everything You Need to Know You Learn in Kindergarten by Robert Fulghum. Mm-hmm. I read it every summer. Say please and thank you, pick up after yourself. If you go out at night, take a friend, don't steal, clean up your room. Take all of that and execute it in a business, you're done.
Well, my next question is usually my last question. Maybe you just answered, Garry, which is, what book recommendation do you have for the audience?
Well, there it is. That's one of my most favorite, but there's a few that I really love. I'm a big fan and a good friend of Simon Sinek. I love his book, The Infinite Game, Start With Why. I've just finished Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown, which I really like. I love Leading with Gratitude written by my friend Chester Elton. And then Marshall Goldsmith's got a new book coming out called The Earned Life, which I've been fortunate enough to see a preview of, and that's going to be an absolute, wonderful, wonderful read. So.
Excellent. Typical overachiever, Garry. I asked for one book, you gave me like 3 or 4. I love it. Well, thank you. I appreciate your joining us today and for all the wonderful insights. I was furiously taking notes over here, so I appreciate the gift to my leadership journey as well.
You're more than welcome.